us is the Page Publishing Book Club. Good evening. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Thanks for stopping by. Say hi to Rob for me. Hey, Rob. It's Rob the engineer. Making us all sound like we know what we're doing over here. We got another cast of characters on the lineup tonight who have made the impossible happen. They've managed to get it together to write the book they've always wanted to write, and they're here to tell you how. We're going to start local with Theodore Haig. Born in Harlem, raised in the Bronx, Haig is determined to preserve the legacy of the people he grew up with in a Bronx housing project. He's written 5 books. 5 books with Page just since October. Now, that's something right there. Now, Theodore, tonight you're going to tell us about your book called New York's Finest, The Bronx View.
It's actually a story about the lives of 6 men who grew up in the Bronx's Soundview projects, who formed a pact and vowed that they would become among New York's finest and survive to maintain the circle of friends despite the conflicts they knew they would have to endure when fighting crime involved their childhood friends. Fundamentally, that's what it's about. What happens in effect is that these guys are, some of them are policemen, some of them work for the district attorney's office, some work for the corrections department, and they meet periodically at these very powerful Bachelors in Blues. Bachelors in Blues are among New York's finest, and they have these conversations and how they deal with the guys that they grew up with that became criminals. The backdrop is 9/11 throughout the novel, and then the main plot, there's a triple homicide that occurs in central Manhattan, and New York's finest that is in pursuit of presumably their friends that committed the crime.
They have to go after people they know that they think committed a crime.
It's a fictional novel, but it's based on a lot of like most of the names. I contacted my friends before I wrote the novel. I got permission to use some of their names. I'm able to capture a lot of the real things that happen throughout our lives. I just got a phone call from 2 of my friends the other day, and they were laughing because it seemed so real. Because the guys that I zero in on, and although they didn't commit these crimes, more than likely when we were kids, they could have committed.
Is this something you'd been wanting to write for a long time, or?
That's an excellent point. It's a way of preserving not only my legacy, but the legacy of Soundview Projects. We basically moved the projects in 1954 when it opened up, and there are a lot of generations that came out of there, a lot of good guys and a lot of wonderful people. It really zeroes in on the conflict that they run into, the good and the bad guys, which is typical of what happens in inner cities, especially in projects. It's typical, so I try to highlight that. But for the most part, what I try to do is preserve our legacy, because these are some wonderful people, and our history needs to be recorded. So it's a fun way of going about expressing our history. I just had my first book reading at the public library down here in Florida. I've got 3 book signings coming up at Barnes & Noble over the next month. I've got another book signing at where the University of Florida is. I'm just trying to find my way right now.
I think you're doing a pretty good job finding your way with all that you have coming up, Theodore. I mean, I have to say also, it's nice to have a book about people who came out of a New York City housing project who are successful and proud of it. Thank you so much for that. Next up, a bookkeeper turned author, Robert Hendricks. All right, here you go. What do you get when you combine culinary arts with a delicious mystery? Juggling with Knives is the name of the book. Are you juggling with knives right now, Robert?
Not if I don't have to, no. It's about a guy who's a chef who used to be an agent for Defense Intelligence. He did special ops stuff and some nasty assignments that are black ops kind of thing. And he got fed up with the lifestyle. And his passion's always been for food. So he decided to take all his hazard pay and put himself through culinary school, which he does. And he becomes an executive chef at a fictitious Greek restaurant up in upstate New York in Alexandria. There's some drug dealing and smuggling going on because the river there is right on the border with Canada, and the stuff's coming down from the Canadian side. And that brings the FBI in, and he kind of buddies up with an FBI agent, and they become kind of like, those Lethal Weapon movies with Danny Glover and Mel Gibson. They're buddies, but they're always talking trash to each other. So I think there's a lot of humor in it, which I think in addition to a good story, it's also funny. My theory is if you can make people laugh, they will come back to you.
I think that's fair enough. I think that's fair to say. Do you have any connection to this story at all?
I'm kind of a foodie myself. I do a lot of cooking, and I just thought, wouldn't it be, we have all these different stories you see in the movies and in books about secret agents and spies and all this stuff. What about some guy who was just an average guy who was a chef?
And he's got this background, so he's pulled into this intrigue, almost as if the intrigue follows him wherever he goes.
Right, and that's where the title comes from. The knives part is his career as a chef, and the juggling part is he's getting pulled back to his old lifestyle in the undercover kind of stuff. So he's pulled between being a chef and being an operative.
What's that saying, as soon as I try to get out, they pull me back in. It's one of those,
Yeah, exactly. The chef, his name is Harry Wells. There's 2 completed manuscripts right now, and a third one I'm planning. I haven't started it yet.
How long were you thinking about this before you actually decided, I'm going to write this down, I'm going to do something with this?
I've had the idea in my head for probably several years, and I wrote some notes originally and stuck it in the file folder. And then a couple of years ago, I got to thinking about it. I said, instead of just thinking about it, I ought to do something. So I decided I'm going to put it on paper.
Are you talking about your book?
Done a lot of word of mouth. I called the local paper here. They did an article on it. And then there's a bookstore in Pasadena called Vroman's. And it's been around since probably 100 years. Anyway, I called their book buyer over there, and she agreed to carry the book in their store.
Well, you could go there and do a signing.
Yeah, I suppose so. I guess I could call her and pester her a little bit, and maybe they'd do it.
Why not? Why not? You're a local author. You're famous.
Yeah.
Kimberly Grimes is an anthropologist. She has studied the Amazon. She takes her University of Delaware students to the Amazon. She has lived there, done research there, and now she's taken all of that experience and weaved it into a mystery entitled The Amazon Heist. So many points of view here, right, Kimberly?
Yes, I wanted to kind of show the students and what they all learned in the Amazon with the people there. I have 2 older British ladies that represent the tourists that come through the Amazon now. There's a lot of ecotourism going on and riverboat cruises. And they were actually, the 2 sisters were sort of inspired by my favorite actors, Maggie Smith and Judi Dench. I could see them as I was writing their words. And then this kind of third set of characters all revolve around this diamond mine that was discovered in the Amazon, and that kind of represents sort of these extractive industries in the Amazon that are, basically destroying the Amazon for a few little diamonds or oil or whatever, mahogany trees. And I actually ended up picking diamonds just because it's plausible that a asteroid strike could hit that part of the earth and they could find them there. So they all end up getting intertwined. The students and the elderly sisters, students visit the diamond mine, and then there's a robbery, and in the end it becomes kind of who did it and who's going to get the diamonds. I really love writing about the Amazon because the people there, they're just, and this is why I like taking students there. I mean, they just always think about others before themselves. They live that way. They don't have a lot of material goods, and yet I would say they're richer than we are as far as happiness because they are so socially connected with one another. All the families work together and friends, and everybody's birthday gets celebrated in the village. And one of the reasons we go to the Amazon in Peru is we also have a fair trade store in Bethany Beach, Delaware, and this is in the novel, too. We work with women. We help them to set up in the village a basket-making cooperative so that they could earn a little cash income. To buy cooking oil, they've got to buy salt because they need that for their diet. They want their kids to go to school, buy books, so they need some cash income. And unfortunately, there's not much choice in the Amazon except, chop down your trees and make charcoal, and they don't want to do that and stuff. So about 8 years ago, my husband started a project working with farmers growing a little nut called Sacha Inchi, and I started working with the women in the village making baskets, and we now sell their things in our shop here in Bethany Beach.
How are you telling people about this book?
In my store, I'm selling it, and, locally, I like to reach out more to bookstores. In fact, I'm hoping this spring to reach out to bookstores all along the Delmarva Peninsula.
Right.
And see if they'd like me to come do a book signing or something.
Good idea, Kimberly, and just in time for the tourist season, right, to get heated up along the Delaware shore there. There's a lot of things we cannot explain in this world, even if we tried. But let's say we went back in time. Maybe we could. I don't know. This is the premise of a book called Cause and Effect, written by Gary Clegg. Gary, explain.
Well, it says that science is God. Science created the whole story. And an example is, how did the Virgin Mary get pregnant? The scientist went back in time, and he teleported a genetically enhanced embryo into her womb.
All right. Where'd you come up with that one?
You know, I've had that in my head for 20 years, maybe 30 years. Back in 1985, I was with two friends of mine, and we went to this carnival. And at this carnival, we went into a palm reader. So my one friend went in. He came out 5 minutes later. They said, blah, 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 you'll live a long life. I went in. 5 minutes later came out. They said, blah, 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 you'll live a long life. And the third guy went in, and he came right back out. He said, oh, they couldn't see my future. Well, the next night, we got in a car accident, all three of us, and he died.
That is scary.
That's pretty wild stuff.
You must have been so freaked
out. But I'm
out.
sure I even had it in my mind back then, the same story. And it just took until my dad died in March of 2012 for me to sit down and say, I'm going to write this.
So you seek to explain all of these religious things through science and time travel.
Yes. The book goes through many of the events in the Bible that can be explained by somebody going back in time.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, you should see how Moses got found in the river.
How?
You
Tell
should
me.
read it. It's pretty... I can't tell you. I don't want to tell everybody the whole story.
Give me one more.
Oh, a scientist went back in time. He had a projector. He had a megaphone, and he projected fire onto a brush. He was hidden from view, and he called Moses over and started telling him to go back and save his brethren.
Okay. I would imagine your friends who are religious might have issues with this.
Oh, my sister is a religious nut, and she was so excited to read it, and then she read it, and she sent me a text that said, oh, God said the world would only last 6,000 years, so this can't possibly be true. And then a few days later, she texted me, oh, yeah, and the world's flat, too. And so, yeah, there's a perfect example of somebody that I thought would support me, and she's not too happy with it at all.
And
no.
This is all for fun, right? You just want people to enjoy this, or do you actually believe in time travel?
Well, I believe that time travel will eventually be possible, and certainly I had one reader tell me, this story makes more sense than the real story. It's not that I necessarily believe it, but I certainly believe that it's possible. Remember, this is just a story written by scientists. This is not the Bible. And the third book will answer a lot of questions that people have. And the very end of the first book will be answered by the second book. And I leave a real twist at the end of it's a cliffhanger at the end of the first book.
All right, Gary. So I guess it's, you read one, you got to read them all, right? All right. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, a soldier story, helping kids learn how to accept all kinds of families, and a chauffeur who's taken up metaphysics. Don't you go anywhere. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Thanks again for being with us tonight. Do you ever think about how diverse families are today and how kids see that? Well, it's the motivation behind a story written by Svetlana Senklement. Her book is called Families. Welcome, Svetlana. Tell us about the inspiration for your book.
One day, my 5-year-old daughter Masha and I went to the park, and there were many children playing at the playground. I noticed that Masha was introducing herself by saying, "I have 2 homes, Mama's house and Papa's house." And the other children were puzzled and had no idea what she's talking about. Growing up in a divorced family, Masha was simply trying to explain her life, but other children did not understand her. And at that moment, I felt the need to educate children about the diversity of family life from a child's perspective. And I decided to write the book, Families. I wanted children to learn that there are different types of families in today's world. And not all children have both parents living together. Some children have parents living separately. Some children have only mother or only father in their family. Some children have 2 mothers, 2 fathers, and some children have no parents at all. So I created happy, easy-flowing rhymes that came out from my heart, hoping that my book will help children to become more understanding and accepting toward each other, despite the differences in their family structure.
It's so important that we do that.
That's correct. And all these types of family exist in our world, but children don't know about it. And they need to be educated. So that was the idea to write that type of book. You know, I love to teach my daughter, and I was pretty much trying to see the world out of her eyes. To make learning more fun, I created joyful music to my rhymes, offering families as a song as well. The musical version of my book might open children's hearts even more.
Have you been able to read this to children at all?
Yes, I give this book as a gift to Masha's friends. And we read together and we sing together, and they have fun doing that. I give it as a gift to the teachers, to the director of the school, and to the library. And I do have 2 book signing events scheduled. Also, my daughter and I have an idea to record a CD in the studio. So we're practicing singing this song together. So it's our next project, creativity that we're working on together.
Nice, Svetlana. Very nice that you can involve your daughter with this project. Very good. All right, next up, a young girl is deployed in Afghanistan with her Army Reserve Unit, and she's assigned a very difficult task. This is J.D. Wynn's story entitled Soldier On. J.D., tell us about your assignment.
They're tasked to work at a prison facility housing suspected terrorists. So it's just kind of her journey as she, navigates her way through kind of like a male-dominant environment, and then she's also in this, very unfamiliar atmosphere of housing terrorists. I was deployed to Afghanistan, so I definitely used that setting for my story. I did work in a prison facility in Afghanistan, so of course I used, some of the things I had seen, but I fictionalized it.
What's the takeaway for the reader?
Well, I think my idea for writing the book is, we see military stories and they're often told by a male. So this is a story told through female eyes. And we see stories about camaraderie between men, but we really don't see that between women. So I wanted to write a story that I think every soldier knows. There's this, when you are deployed, you make these friendships, and it's just, there isn't even words. You just get so close to these people. And of course, she got close to her male counterparts too, but it's more about how females, stick together in those times.
So women do stick together. Sometimes women don't stick together.
Yeah, and that's true. And she's not friends with everybody, and there's kind of some storylines about that. But in my experience, I became so close to these women that I shared the tent with. And, you work in my experience, we worked 12-hour days together. And you're sleeping together, then you're eating together, you're even showering together. So your friendships, you just get to know these people, sometimes even better than your own family. And you just rely on these people so much. And it's, like I said, I think every soldier has this feeling of you bond with people like you've never bonded with someone before. And that's kind of what I wanted to touch base with my story.
All right, JD, thanks so much, by the way, for your service to our country. I can't even imagine being in the Army, so thank you. What does a former chauffeur know about metaphysics and how to cure a sick world? That's the name of a book by Richard Moss, and we're about to find out. Richard.
Well, first of all, metaphysics started with the ancient Greeks. I think it was Aristotle that came up with the term. So it's actually a Western philosophy, and it's not what most people think of. The word has kind of changed its meaning somewhat, to mean some kind of a Eastern or spirituality or something. And it's mostly a book on philosophy, and that's what I know about it from reading books from Aristotle and all the ancient Greek philosophers, and then all the modern philosophers, Thomas Jefferson, and they're pretty much metaphysicians also. So I read a lot of books, and finally I decided to build on that, take it to a new level. And so I wrote a book which contains some very new ideas in it.
For instance, how do we cure a sick world?
Well, what we need is a new paradigm and new ideas, something that will replace religion. Because religion and all the philosophies are really part of the problem. They're not working. So this book is created to replace all the religions of the world and something new, something that might just bring peace to the earth rather than the wars which they have been causing. And so that's kind of why I wrote the book. So it's mostly a study book, like a college textbook, more than just a plain entertainment book. But it's very educational, and it should make some real differences if enough people read it. We'll see what happens.
Have you gone to any colleges or shown your book to any college professors to see if they might actually consider using it?
No, I haven't. Should I just walk into a classroom? How do I go about that?
Well, you find somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Or else they'll think you're kind of a nut, Richard. They'll think you're crazy.
Yeah, they probably will.
Yeah.
But, most of the great ideas started out by someone who everybody thought was a nut. So there's nothing unshameful about that. It's not uncommon for new ideas to be viewed that way. And this book has some very new ideas. If I could get people to read it, it'd be great, especially students, But I think it's going to catch on sooner or later because it is important. I think those ideas will get out there, one way or the other. We'll see.
Thank you, Richard. Speaking of new ideas, Roy Perkins wrote a book called Without Denomination, a critique of church doctrines. And that's exactly what your book is about, right, Roy?
It is actually a critique of all the church doctrines on all the denominations, which ones are right, which ones are wrong. And unfortunately, there's not a scriptural church in the land. They're all wrong. And I point that out, and I back it up with biblical references.
Are you a minister or?
No.
Okay, so what makes you qualified to do that?
I've researched the Bible. I've been a deacon in several churches. I've been on committees. I feel I'm as qualified as any pastor in the land.
You're talking about the issues with the traditional church.
Right. Tradition is the problem. You just hit it on the head. They've been going by tradition for hundreds of years, but the traditions are wrong.
Okay, how are they wrong?
Well, for For instance, infant baptism is not scriptural, yet most Protestant churches and the Catholic Church carry it on all the time. So it's supposed to be complete immersion underwater. You can't put an infant underwater. The thing is, the Roman Catholic Church is full of errors. It's last rites, no such thing. Extreme unction, they call it. It's not scriptural. Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't even believe Jesus is God, and he is God, according to the Bible. The Mormons believe in several gods. And then you got Islam. It's a man-made religion out to persecute women. We talk about interfaith services. They're not scriptural either, because that's like slapping Jesus Christ in the face. Jesus is the only way, so why go to the interfaith services? They don't do anything, really. It's just a bunch of people getting together to have a service for no reason at all. Christmas trees, they shouldn't be put in the sanctuary, because in Jeremiah he says, don't cut down the tree and decorate it with gold and bring it into your home. Churches have Easter egg hunts, not scriptural. Peter Cottontail hopping down the bunny trail is not scriptural.
What do you suggest that we do?
Well, the pastors are all at fault, too, because they either don't want to make waves because they'll lose their job, or they don't know the truth. So the pastors of the clergy, priests included, are leading the parishioners down the primrose path to destruction. That's the problem. They have to change, and they have to work with the church and the people in the church and say, look, this is wrong. We're supposed to be doing it this way, not that way.
You're saying every religion.
Every single one of them are wrong.
We have to scrap them all and start over, basically.
Right. Well, some of them can be just modified. You got Baptist churches and congregational churches. They could be modified and fixed. But something like the Roman Catholic Church, Jehovah's, Mormons, Islam, scrap it. Not fixable.
Is that what you're hoping to accomplish with this book, is to convince people?
I would like to see that, but it's not going to happen.
Okay.
The Spirit led me to write this book, and the Spirit said that the information is out there, but they're not going to adhere to it. I'm hoping it'll initiate some change, a little, anything.
All right.
And maybe it will multiply. I don't know. Maybe it'll just sit there.
Fair enough, Roy. Some food for thought as we come to the end of another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Thank you so much for tuning in and keeping us company. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Rob Barrett is our engineer, and you are welcome to come back next week for a whole new point of view from a whole new set of authors. Same time, same place, 710 WOR. Have a great weekend.